Hi, guys. Welcome to tonight's live chat. How are you? I hope you're doing okay on this Friday afternoon or evening. I should say it's almost 7 o'clock. Good to see you guys. I see some of you signing on, which is good to see. I don't have any tech issues right now, and I do see YouTube letting me know that you guys are going to get notifications. So somebody let me know if you got the notification tonight that I was going to be speaking live on the channel, because for the past couple of months, you guys haven't been getting notifications because of something that's wrong within the notification system of YouTube. So I've been trying to figure this out. And I even, contacted creator support just to ask like what's going on here. So hopefully you guys got the notification. I do see you, Axe to Edge. I do see Give It a Think. I see Eris. Hopefully I have that correct. Awesome. So glad you're getting notifications. Thanks for confirming. Hopefully most of you are getting notifications, but we'll see. But let me know as we go along. Let's jump in, guys. This has been an interesting week for me. And if you've been following my most recent video, it's been kind of interesting because I decided to kind of break out of the mold of the typical therapeutic topics. Okay, guys, you know how I am. And I decided to focus on those things that no other therapist really focuses on. And I get in trouble every time in some fashion, but I think it's so needed. We need authenticity. We need genuinity when it comes to who we are as humans. We understand bits and pieces of who we are, and science and medicine is extraordinary, right? So, we know on the inside how intelligent and how sophisticated the world is when it comes to the human mind, when it comes to the brain, when it comes to the body, right? We know that. But there's a flip side of life, right? And that other side of life is there is a spiritual realm, and trying to figure out what that is can take a very long time, and it can be a tricky roller coaster ride. But if you followed my video that I posted on Tuesday, it was really about the quote unquote demons within your family. And I used that video to highlight some of the things the field of psychology is embracing, and kind of some of the direction that the DSM and the ICD, International Classification of Mental Disorders, the direction that manual is going. And I've gotten a lot of messages, comments, emails, DMs asking me to talk about it again at some point. So that might be down the line, okay? But it kind of goes into this conversation tonight because we're going to talk about the dark personality. There's some people who believe there's no such thing as a dark personality. Most people believe, there's good in everybody. Everybody has a good heart. Everybody, wants to be kind to another person. And while that is a very subjective, comforting message, I don't know if that's the truth, right? And so based on personal experience, I'm sure with you guys, based on personal and professional experience of mine over 16 years, and also based on psychological research, everybody is not a good person. And so research started to delve into the idea that there are some personality traits in certain people that can not only be a threat to you, can not only be a threat to me, but is operating in the world, looking and appearing one way that they are not internally. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. They look the part, but they aren't the part. They look the part, but they aren't the part. And we call individuals who look the part, who really are not the part, we give them a variety of names. But the most common is narcissist. You guys know this. Sociopath, psychopath, right? And the character of Machiavellianism. Let me show you something briefly before I keep, oh my God, come on. Before I keep introducing this topic, all right? Let me show you how we're going to look at this tonight. So there is what we call the dark triad, and we have really a three-way personality I'm going to say a three-way personality dynamic or characteristic. And so we look at, when we're talking about the dark triad, I'm going to break it down a little bit. We talk about narcissism. Okay. And then we also talk about psychopathy. And there are two types of psychopathy. So I'm going to clarify that tonight. And then we also talk about Machiavellianism. Hold on, I got to figure out how to spell this. Machiavellianism. Okay, don't judge my spelling, guys. This is not a good day for me. But this is the dark triad, okay? And there are two types of psychopathy. You guys have probably never heard this before, huh? Okay, so there's two types, and these are subtypes. I'm just going to show you what this looks like, okay? Subtypes. This is how this looks on paper. Woo, there we go. Girl, I need to use a marker, guys. This is not working out. You can't see that. You just can't see that. So I'm going to do this over, but I'm going to talk as I do it over, okay? So when we're talking about the dark, ooh, I got that in the garbage can, guys. Some part of me is working tonight, not all of it, but some of it. When we talk about the dark triad, okay, we're not talking about an individual who's just a sociopath, just a psychopath, just a narcissist, just a person with Machiavellian characteristics. We're talking about an individual who has overlapping symptoms or behaviors and personality characteristics that makes them doubly intimidating and dangerous. You know, most people either characterize a person as having something or not having something. So in black and white terms, you're either a psychopath or you're not. You're either a narcissist or you're not, right? We tend to just label that person one label. But what happens when we talk about the dark triad, and this is what researchers have really tried to make clear when considering these personality traits, what we're talking about with the dark triad is you have a core feature personality type that makes you complicated. And so that may be narcissism. Okay. So narcissism, if I spelled that correctly, may be the foundational problem with the person. But outside of narcissism is two other characteristics that makes the narcissist that much more dangerous. And that would be psychopathy, okay, and Machiavellianism. I think I spelled it right this time, guys. Okay. So here's how this looks with a marker. Now you can see it, right? So there's the dark triad, psychopathy on one side, narcissism on another side, and then we have Machiavellianism. These things connect. It's not like this is an individual who shows these traits sometimes and those traits sometimes. It's more of take this person as a whole. They are a psychopath, they are a narcissist, and they also have Machiavellian traits. And that makes up their personality characteristics. Now, when we break down a psychopath, we have, I'm going to give you a visual of this as well. We have a primary subtype. Okay, so we have a primary psychopath. And then we also have a secondary psychopath. Ooh, my writing and spelling is bad tonight, guys. Okay, and so this makes the dark triad that much more complicated because a primary subtype of psychopath is the individual tends to be emotionally detached. That's the subtype of primary psychopath. They tend to be very emotionally detached. They have this, and I believe that I've been in the years of my profession, I've been kind of introduced to this in sessions with some of the psychopaths I've sat with and had really long sessions with in the past. But with a primary psychopath, we're talking about a person who is innately shallow and superficial. And they have a very deep-seated superficial charm that at first glance seems like it's a nice thing. You sit down with this person, you have a conversation with this person, or maybe this person is your dad, your mom, your sibling. And at first glance, they look wonderful, right? They look healthy, they look embracing, they look kind, they look intelligent, right? And they may also kind of throw out there this energy, this charismatic energy that says, I am to be adored, right? I am to be liked. I think well. I speak well. I do well, right? That's the primary psychopath. They tend to have this innate superficial charm. And it's so all encompassing for everyday people that it's hard for them to see far beyond what that psychopath is actually like, because they have this innate, internalized, superficial charm. And I've been in situations professionally, whether that's coworkers or with clients or with patients, whatever. If there's a psychopath that tends to lean more towards the primary psychopath, right, the subtype, you got to think of psychopathy in this way. There we go. You got to think of psychopathy in this way: primary psychopath, secondary psychopath at the top. Okay. And it all connects here with the dark triad. Does that make sense, guys? I hope it does. If not, we're going to go over it some more. But you've got this primary subtype that is just really convincing, right? And people who have been in relationships, they've been in family situations, they've been in neighbor situations, friend situations, where, they stand back after that psychopath has completely destroyed their lives. They stand back and say, how could I let that happen? What was I thinking? What was I doing? Why didn't I see this? Why didn't I know cousin Kiki was a psychopath? Why did I date that guy or that girl over there? How could I have let this happen to me? And it's because the primary subtype of the psychopath is inherently superficially charming. But they tend to have this undercurrent emotional detachment. And so nothing they say or do is going to result in them having a conscience, because that's just not the way it's going to be for them. Now, the secondary subtype of a psychopath, this is all a part of the dark triad, because in the dark triad, we have psychopathy. And then psychopathy breaks down into the primary psychopath and the secondary psychopath. Can you see how complicated that all gets? But the secondary psychopath tends to be impulsive. They're not as thoughtful and superficially charming as the primary psychopath, but they tend to have these terrible traits housed within them because of trauma and because of environmental factors. Environmental factors could be given up, parents gave you up to the adoption system, right? You've been in several foster cares or foster care homes. You've been abused and neglected as a child. Maybe there was a terrible relationship where there's been domestic violence all through it. Maybe intergenerational trauma in your family exposed you to something. And a little bit over time, those factors of trauma, those environmental factors like bullying and intimidation and constant rejection and really not being able to fit in, all of these things can cause the secondary subtype psychopath, where they are impulsive and they are very much psychopathic, but it's not inherent. It's basically the result of various environmental and traumatic factors that has molded them into the psychopath that they are. So psychopath, again, guys, it breaks down into two different subtypes. And, that complicates the dark triad a lot. The dark triad tends to encompass a lack of empathy, tends to encompass shallow affect, and callousness, Machiavellianism. You guys know what that is. We talk about it all the time on this channel. It's basically this internalized feeling of pleasure that I have caused somebody else pain, agony, sorrow, defeat, right? I have done something that puts me here over the person that I have now affected. And that's a very arrogant disposition to be in. But that is the Machiavellian personality. It's I'm here and you're here because I've done all of this to you. And look at you sink over there. And look at me over here, laughing and smiling and bragging and thinking about how wonderful I am, that I came up with this idea on my own, that I should hurt you, steal your life, manipulate and abuse you, and traumatize you. I'm a wonderful person. That is a very real example of how a Machiavellian personality tends to think. It's a very disgusting kind of way that they think, right? Because who would be happy about that? It's who they are. Now, let me throw in here that when we're talking about the dark triad, we're also talking about this deep-seated grandiosity. And if you have a father or a mother, for example, or a relationship partner who is very, very arrogant, they believe in themselves so much that they don't take constructive criticism very well. They don't like to be told what to do. They have this inferiority complex that's buried beneath all the narcissism that they have, right? They have these insecurities on the inside. You'll never know about it because they won't let you know it. You know, they're going to put themselves out there. And you have an individual who has this strong need for approval. You put all of that together, and it's a terrible ball of confusion. And grandiosity just stands on top of that ball of confusion. And it makes things so much worse, right? Because a grandiose individual lacks humility, they don't listen, they lack direction, and they have a need for, and research backs this up as well, they have a very, very strong need for interpersonal dominance. And that desire for dominance means that they are going to do whatever it takes to impact you negatively or to get what they want from you. And if that means deception, if that means evil, pre-planned behaviors, if that means writing a manifesto and leaving it after the crime, right? If that means sending you 9 pages of a letter telling you off about how bad you are, they will do that. Whatever it takes, they will do it. They do not have a fear, according to research on dark triad traits. These individuals do not have a fear of consequences. They also do not have a fear of relationship loss, right? Which is why they sometimes get into a relationship with other people, or they try to get close to you as a family member, and then they act out, right? And you may be the one standing there thinking, why would you do this? Like, we were getting along, we didn't have any issues, right? We didn't have any arguments. What went wrong? You know, and you may be the one standing off watching this person thinking that, right? And it's because they don't know how to engage in relationships all the time. And that's basically because of their narcissism and their psychopathy. Those two things together make it very hard for somebody of the dark triad traits, or somebody that has these characteristics to blend in with the world and to have a relationship and to make it a healthy relationship. They don't care about that. They have no fear of losing you. They have no fear of hurting your feelings. And they most definitely have no fear of getting in trouble with the law or getting in trouble with their boss or another family member. That's just not who they are, right? So if you think of it kind of like a layered sandwich, it might be a little bit better to digest, right? You've got Machiavellianism at the top, right? So that's the first slice of bread. In the middle, you've got cheese and ham in the middle, right? And so that would be the narcissism. And then the final piece of bread would be the psychopath. And you put all that together and you have a very, very chaotic, unstable, destabilizing kind of an individual. Parent, sibling, friend, romance partner, coworker, whoever, right? And so if you have, for example, a dad like this is going to be a very difficult dynamic, because you may have had the kind of father, the kind of mother who says, I need to be honored, I need to be respected, right? I don't want you to talk back to me, and please don't share your thoughts about me or anybody else with me, right? You are to do as I say. You are not to give me any constructive criticism or feedback. And no, I'm not supporting you. I'm not supporting your decisions. Let's say you have a parent like that. It can destroy you for the rest of your life. It doesn't mean that you can't bounce back, but it can make the road of development, very difficult for you, right? Because people with the dark triad traits, they have the callousness of a psychopath. They have the grandiosity of a narcissist, and they have the sick desire to harm others as Machiavellianism. They have that piece to the puzzle as well. And so, you know, if you're in a situation with somebody like this, it really does take some methodical, calculated, strategic way of dealing with them, right? And I'm going to get to, once I go to the chat box, I'm going to get to the characteristics of who these people are and why this is really difficult. Now, let me throw this in here as well. Now that I'm thinking about it, that there are some people who do not believe that the dark triad exists, because research doesn't necessarily call people, for example, the dark empath, because that's kind of used interchangeably. The dark triad, the dark empath. A lot of people feel confused by that. Why are you calling that person an empath, right? If they're dark, and why are you calling them an empath if they tend to be evil? And so I understand that, I understand that perplexity and that complexity of the term and the theory. But you want to keep in mind, as we go on through this talk tonight, that you want to see the dark characteristic as a person who kind of exhibits on the outside. This is why it's called a dark empath. You want to think of these people as exhibiting this caring, fully engaged, balanced, emotionally stable, sensible, mature kind of disposition, when the reality, once you kind of get through those cobwebs, you clear your view and you can now see who they really are. You realize that, oh, wait a minute, they are far from empathic. They are far from emotionally intelligent. As a matter of fact, they are using their idea of human relationships, of love and affection, of trust and honesty, to get me and to manipulate me and to take over my life, my freedom, my heart, my mind, right? And that's the scary piece of the dark triad traits. It's an individual who on the outside could appear very normal, loving, caring, empathic. And you may never be able to spot with your eyes who this characteristic is, or this character, until they start to open the doors for you. I'm going to give you an example before I go to the chat box. I'm going to give you a professional example of this. And it scared the bejeebers out of me, okay? And I think that's why, I don't know, maybe around, it had to be 10 years ago. So maybe at the age of 29, okay, at the age of 29, I had a client. And she was a very disturbed young lady. Okay. She came into my office. I just started private practice a couple years ago. By the time I was 29, I think I was in private practice for about 3 years, something like that. And so she came into my office. She sat in the waiting room. She was so cute. Okay. So this was a 24-year-old young girl. She seemed younger than 24. She could pass for 17 and a half, maybe 18. She was so cute. She had her hair nicely groomed, she had a nice polka dot kind of band that held her hair together. She had these big, pretty white earrings on, lovely white dress with polka dots, she had a clutch bag or some kind of nice purse, she looked really, really put together, and I thought she was a cute kid. But then as sessions went on, she seemed okay. Her disposition, her personality was all right. We would laugh some sessions, and I really could feel that she was relying upon me as her kind of like educator and supporter and emotional supporter. And she did really well for a good 2.5 years. But then she turned 27. Was she 24 at the time? Yeah. So she turned 27, came back to me because she had left, had a baby, had a husband, then they divorced, and she came back to me. When she came back to me, though, something had left. She wasn't that 24-year-old who was cute looking in the waiting room that was waiting on this new therapist to come and grab her and go back and see what she needs in terms of therapy. Like, she wasn't that way. She came to therapy. She was dressed, as my kids in therapy say, emo. She was dressed with black on. Everything was black from head to toe. She had these gloves on with her fingertips open. And, she was thinner. She kind of gave me the impression of some kind of villain, like somewhere in her mind, she had changed from, Cinderella or Alice in Wonderland, Alice from Alice in Wonderland. She changed from that into this dark villain, this dark character that didn't care to come across as innocent. She looked like she would rob you in a minute. And so we had a conversation, and she said, I wrote this letter, and this letter that I've written, I want you to proofread it for me. Excuse me. And I said, sure, I'll proofread it. Excuse me, guys. Excuse me. And so I said, yeah, I can read it. Absolutely. I love when clients write letters because it helps us both evaluate where you're at. And she's like, okay. Goes down in her bag. She was carrying a nice classy purse the first time around. Second time around, she went down in this black bag, with a strap, a string, whatever you call it. And she hands me this letter. Okay. The letter had to be about this thickness. Okay. So she had quite a bit of pages. I had to keep the letter and take it home and read and read and read. As I read this letter, guys, she was painting herself to be a victim, to be harassed, to be intimidated, bullied, to be unloved by her family, to be unloved by her 7-year-old child, to be manipulated and harmed by her husband, to be prejudged by me, her therapist, by her boss and her coworkers. They were enemies as well. And as I read through this, it felt very much like a manifesto. It felt very much like a letter that says, you are my enemy, you are my enemy, you are my enemy, and you are too. And you are too. Oh, and don't let me forget, you're an enemy too. And as I skimmed through those pages, I could feel just my soul and my gut, my intuition just say, I got to do something because this is not okay. And so her disposition was, I am a victim and the whole world has harmed me. And because of that, I have the right to point you out and you out and you out and you out. And I may harm you in some fashion because I feel that I am here and you are here in my life and in my world because of everything you have done to hurt me. And so because of that, I'm going to shut the door. I'm not going to communicate with you. I'm not going to give you eye contact or attention. You are on my forever enemy list. And that's what she titled it. The title of her letter was My Forever Enemy List. And she was very rigid, very dark, very grandiose, very intimidating. And what's scary about her character, before I go to the chat box, what's scary about her character was there was nothing really that she put in there that I could say, you know what, you're going to the hospital. Or, you know what, let me just report this to law enforcement. There was nothing there. Why? Because she had learned that if she shared anything in therapy, that it was likely going to lead to hospitalization. It was likely going to lead to law enforcement getting involved, and it would lead to her getting in trouble with me. So the way that she protected herself is, you tell me that I shouldn't talk a certain way because people can misconstrue it. I told her that, years before she stopped coming to me, that when you write things down, this is a very, very good indicator of your mental status. And so you want to be careful how you're expressing things, because if somebody gets this letter, guys, if somebody gets this letter, you may be on your way to jail. So what did she do? She took that, she digested that, and she skewed things, right? And she kind of changed things. So she didn't give me one thing that I could contact law enforcement about, that I could put her in the hospital for, but the letter was horrendous. And really, I ended up grappling with narcissism, which was that grandiose, everybody's the enemy and I'm the one who's being harmed. That's grandiosity, that's narcissism. The other piece of this was psychopathy. She kind of made this list of people that have harmed her, and she really lived in her mind as a person who is misunderstood, disregarded, and bullied. And that was her fantasy world that she was in. The other piece that I ended up grappling with was the Machiavellianism. She really thought that she could put fear in other people, that she could tell them off, and that she could kind of lord over them with her intelligence. And she liked that they were beneath her. She had that, ooh, this feels good. That's Machiavellianism. And it was a very, very complex case. It took me a very, very long time to unwind myself from it, because there was a lot of law enforcement involved. There was a lot of, child protective services for her her daughter involved. It was a bad situation. So that's an example of the dark triad traits. It's a ball of confusion all mixed into one. And it can be really, really detrimental to your life. For the night's live chat, guys, I'm going to try to wrap up here around 8 p.m. Eastern time. For tonight's live chat, I'm going to give you common behaviors with these people, because they are more common than you think. I want to give you just a little bit of research that's mixed in, because research is ongoing about dark triad traits. And if you've grown up in a family that has these kind of complex traits, I'm going to give you some information on how this impacts you. All right, guys. So let me go back to the chat box and see what you guys are saying. Pink Meadows, so glad to see you. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Always glad to see your positivity. Phoenix, thanks so much for stopping by. Good to see you as well. Wisdom Seeker and Give It a Think. Axe to Edge. Aris, I think that's it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Actually Jovial, Bossy Truthy 15. Hello and welcome to all of you guys. So good to see you. Actually Jovial says, it's like I have to turn it on every time. Yeah, the notification. I don't know what's going on there. Isn't it frustrating? I'm sorry. I'm working on it. Bossy Truthy 15. Hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. I think I said hello to you. I don't remember. MS, good to see you. I hate those notifications. I do. I don't know what to do. It frustrates me to no end. I'm sorry. Learning a lot. Hello and welcome. Good to see you and welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you. Sylvia Love Jones. Hello. Welcome back. Good to see you. A and B. Good to see you. And Elizabeth. Hello. Good to see you. I'm going to skim your comment really quickly. Oh, God. Ugh. Elizabeth, this situation with your neighbor is insane, for lack of a clinical word. I don't like using that word, but it literally feels like insanity, doesn't it? You do have to ask yourself, is this a person who likes to fight? Is this a person who gets pleasure out of arguments and being against their neighbor? If so, you might be dealing with Machiavellianism. You never know, especially if he gets pleasure out of this whole thing. MNL Odell, good to see you. Welcome back tonight. Pink Meadow says manipulators, selfish, devious, punitive, hellish, spiteful. Yes, they're all of that. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up, because those are adjectives and action words. Or is that an action word? I think it's an action word. No, maybe it's not. I've been out of high school for a while. You guys can probably tell. But those are terms that very much describes who they are. if you need something that is short and succinct, Pink Meadows has your back, because that's exactly what it is. Don Juan, good to see you. Good to see you. Welcome back tonight. The Good Glow, good to see you. Thank you so much. Hope you are as well. Ellie Wynn, good to see you. And Sun and Sunflowers, good to see you as well. Welcome back. Happy Friday. Aren't you guys happy it's Friday? I just need that time off, Yeah. Prism, is that it? Yes. Thank you. You're like my mom tonight, because my mom, a couple live chats ago, I was using the pen, and she has her own little YouTube account. She looks through and watches all, anybody that she wants to watch on YouTube. And she's like, don't ever use a pen again. Make sure you have a Sharpie. So thank you, Prism. I appreciate you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate you. YHWH sent me. Ooh, that's an interesting one. Hello and welcome. Welcome to the channel. Good to see you. YHWH sent me, says, people may not be familiar with Machiavellianism. Perhaps a brief explanation is in order. 100%. I hope I made it clear. I gave you an example multiple times. Thank you for that, because I may have gone over it and not given an explanation. Force of Living. Hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Gary Bennett, good to see you. Welcome back, my friend. I know when you're not here. A couple chats ago, I'm like, where's my buddy Garrett Bennett? Good to see you. Stacy Del Buccia, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Hello and welcome back. Always glad to see you in a chat. YHWH sent me, says, the adoption system is a good example of being motivated by money paid instead of genuine love for the child. Yeah, it can be. It certainly can be. I've had foster parents who are absolutely beautiful people. I had them last week in therapy, both mom and dad, and I think they are fantastic parents. No parent is perfect. No parent's going to give the child everything they need. But for those kids not to be their biological children, they certainly treat them with respect, love, care, concern. They are the best parents ever. But then I also have other parents who have adopted. And I used to scratch my head and think, why? Why would you go through this entire process of adopting just to abuse this child, just to demean them, right? Just to blame them and to ridicule, So you're right. Sometimes the adoption system can be a good example of that. I hate to say it, but it's very true. It's very true. The Good Glow says wicked. Yeah, the dark triad traits. Yep. Ellie Wynn says disgusting. Yes, being disgusted by their cruelty is a healthy reaction to these destructive characters. Absolutely. Yes, it is, Ellie Wynn. I agree. Ellie Wynn says interpersonal dominance. Bullseye. Yeah, because that's who they are. Interpersonal dominance may not look like it, right? So we're not always talking about individuals who are lording over you, because that can look like interpersonal dominance as well. This arrogant, self-righteous disposition that says, I am better than you. Not always shown that way. Sometimes the interpersonal dominance can be seen in a moment where that person is saying they've been bullied, they've been mistreated, they've been intimidated, they've been harassed, right? Sometimes the grandiosity or that interpersonal dominance can come through in that way. I've had situations in the past where I've had a client sit down with me and say, I'm being harassed, I'm being bullied, I'm being intimidated, when the reality is you're only being treated that way because of how you treat them. You're grandiose, you're narcissistic, you're arrogant, you're cranky and irritable. You don't seem to be a very kind person. And as a result, you are getting negative feedback from other people. And that isn't necessarily bullying, intimidation. And it also isn't necessarily harassment. Some people will cry harassment. No, it's just a response to your behavior. And so you can sometimes see that interpersonal dominance in people who run and cry, boohoo, that they are not being liked, they're not being accepted, they're not being embraced. But again, that's because of their disposition towards other people. So they're only getting, they're only getting back what they give, but they don't recognize that in themselves. It's a very confusing kind of a dynamic, And I've had clients like that in the past. It's very hard for me to make it to the 5th or 6th session with them, because somewhere I have to tell them it is because of this mentality. It is because of that behavioral problem. It's because of that attitude that you are now being treated this way. If you are humble and kind, nice, patient, embracing, open, people might actually like you, but you're only getting back what you give. And so that interpersonal dominance, it really makes them think they're the victim. They feel like they're up here, and if you don't like me, then I'm the victim. It's pretty scary. Lisa Govins, I hope I said that correctly. Hello and welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you. That's a good question. How do you know I know if I am not the narcissist? How do I know if I am the narcissist? So let me try to reword this. How do I know if I am not the narcissist? I think that's what you meant. How do you know? If you are asking yourself if you are a narcissist, you probably aren't a narcissist. And I tell my clients this all the time. If you are asking yourself if you're a narcissist, you probably aren't a narcissist, because a narcissist has this much self-insight. Now, there's kind of like this new kind of age narcissism where people say, I am a narcissist and I know I'm a narcissist, and they go around kind of giving people ideas about who they are as a narcissist. This is what I do that makes me a narcissist. And I don't know if I subscribe to that kind of theory and mentality. I really think that if you're asking if you're a narcissist, then you have insight and you recognize that there may be some things about you don't like, but you also recognize yourself, your behavior, your character. So if you're asking me if you're a narcissist, I'm not sure I believe you are. I hope that answered your question. That's a hard one for me. We could do a whole live chat on that one. Actually, Jovio says, you can't get anything unless you exploit yourself sexually, no matter how dedicated and hardworking you are. The way these individuals dominate the workforce is spooky and atrocious. Yeah, they do dominate the workforce, don't they? Yeah, I agree with that. Sun and Sunflower says, my siblings would start an argument out of the blue, even when we are all getting along. All of my family is like this. Yep. Yes, absolutely. I've seen that as well. The dark triad traits within a family, Sun and Sunflowers, can be detrimental for the rest of your life. Why? Because you have grown up in a dynamic that is unhealthy, grown up in a dynamic where there are self-righteous, quote unquote, victims. There's manipulation and control. There's a need for interpersonal dominance. There's that narcissism that creates that grandiosity, and all of that gets built into the family dynamic. So then if that's built into the family dynamic, how do you share your emotions and your thoughts without feeling targeted? How do you get that support and love and affection without feeling criticized? Right? Do you have that safe person to go to and talk to and get hugs from and be educated about things from? Right? Can you share your deepest fears within the family? And if there's a no there, then the family dynamic is very destructive. It's very destructive. We actually give it a term. It's called conformity-oriented family, meaning that you are not allowed to share how you feel, share what you think, or disagree. It's a conformity orientation. You must conform. And families where there's a dark triad, whether that's both parents, one parent, a sibling, there's conformity. There's a conformity orientation. You have to conform. And that's a stuck place to be in, right, guys? Chrism, thank you for that. You're welcome. You're welcome. We need to know it, right? We need to know it. I had no idea after I graduated graduate school. I spent almost 10 years in higher education, and I didn't know until I professionally and personally, as well as in my training at the time, ran into these personalities. It's very sad. We need more knowledge. Laura Fed, I don't know if I welcomed you. Hello and welcome to the chat. Oh God, sounds like your pap. Yeah, you're probably going to think about a few people tonight in this live chat. Okay, let me keep moving, guys, so I can make sure that we are all getting everything in before 8 p.m. Eastern time. Black woman, I think that's it. If not, forgive me. Hello and welcome to the channel. Good to see you. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Donna Lee, hello and welcome. Good to see you tonight. Fairy Girl, hello and welcome. Good to see you tonight. Regina Myers, good to see you. Welcome back. David Howard, hello and welcome. Good to see you. And welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you. David Howard says, my ex-wife and mother of my 2 children is diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. After digging and researching, it seems more than that. That aside, my boys are 10 and 12. What do I do to protect them? I have custody. Well, that's a hard one, and that can be another long live chat, David Howard. But for the purposes of me just being short and to the point, because of time, hold on, guys. I feel like my camera is out of focus. There we go. For the purpose of time, I think the way that you can kind of start the process of saving your boys, therapy. Get them in with a good therapist. I love when parents bring their kids to me because we can talk, grow together, learn. They develop a relationship with me. They come to therapy as their safe place. They tell me things they can't tell their mom or dad. Even if you are a good dad, there may be some things they don't want to share with you, right? And they may need this outside perspective to help them kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of help them feel like they're getting their thoughts and their feelings clicked into the right place, So I would say get them into some therapy. The therapist, could very much become a confidant to your boys and be able to help them identify, what's wrong with mom, and what's going on in that dynamic. So I'll leave it at that. Hopefully that was helpful. Yes, you're welcome, Ellie Wynn. Yes, you're welcome. Give it a think, sis Tamara. That's scary as heck. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I agree. Okay, one more comment before I go back to the content. Learning a Lot says these head case demon have been around since the beginning of time. They're not going anywhere, so we must learn to protect ourselves. I agree with that. 100%. I agree. Very much agree. Let me get in one more comment before we go back to the content. Mystery Gray, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Good to see you. Celeste, hello and welcome. Welcome to the channel. I don't remember you either, Mystery Gray or Celeste. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Welcome to the both of you. Good to have you. Yes, you're welcome, David Howard. David Howard says, thank you for continuing to do this. I found you when I needed it and have followed without interaction. You have helped me greatly on my journey. Love the positivity on the inside. Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So glad to have you and so glad this is helpful to you. That's awesome. All right, guys, I can't find, here we go. I found a comment. MS says, my brother I'm speaking with thinks I'm wrong for going no contact with all other family members. This scapegoat has had enough. I hope I'm not the type of person you are describing, Tamara. I don't think you are. MS. Let me just say that you're always going to get some kind of pushback when it comes to going no contact. Why? Because like we talked about a couple weeks ago, it's family is everything, right? That's the concept of the whole world. And they don't necessarily understand that not everybody's family is everything, right? Because they can be detrimental, they can be harmful. So you may have a sibling, right? A brother who's coming from that mindset and he just doesn't get you. You know what I mean? I really think that you should continue to go with your intuition, and maybe you can educate him by how you react to him. You know what I mean? And kind of pushing him out of the way a little bit if he's creating stress and distress for you. So I hope that was helpful, MS. Let's get into these common traits and issues with these people. You ready for this, guys? The first thing that I have seen, and research backs this up when we're talking about the dark triad, is that these people tend to be what we call socially aversive. Now, what this means is that the person who is the dark triad, so the one with Machiavellian personality traits, the narcissist and the psychopath, they tend to, excuse me, they tend to engage in behaviors that are socially unacceptable to other people or socially aversive to other people. They're constantly doing something socially that really puts them in a light, puts them over here in a light where people don't like them, and you may have a person who has dark triad traits come to you and say, nobody likes me. Nobody wants to be my friend. Nobody wants to get to know me. I can't find a romantic partner. My family wants nothing to do with me. I've never been popular in school, right? When a person is saying all of those things for a therapist, right, or a medical provider, and even for you, if you feel like this is a family member or somebody that you're in a relationship with, you really do have to step back and ask yourself, am I dealing with a person with the dark triad traits? Am I dealing with a narcissist who is grandiose and feels that they need to be praised, for everything that they do? Am I dealing with a psychopath who is cold and callous and distant emotionally? And am I dealing with somebody who gets great pleasure out of causing people harm or difficulty? And if the answer is yes, you're dealing with a dark triad and you're dealing with a socially aversive person, because when they are in a social setting, Machiavellianism may show itself even more. So teasing people, calling them names, humiliating other people on the spot, trying to appear more intelligent than everybody else, saying offensive things or racist things or discriminatory things or highly charged things, political things that can cause a social reaction. That is socially aversive. That person engages in behaviors that causes society, not just one person, not just two people, not just three people, but a whole classroom, a whole school, the neighborhood, the family, to say, you know what, you belong over there. I want nothing to do with you. Socially aversive. They also tend to have what we call amorality. Amorality, meaning that they don't care about what is moral and what is not. They don't care. You know how sometimes for you and me, we may do something like when my mom she used to love to go grocery shopping. So what I would do is pull in front of the store and let my mom get out of the car. And then I would go park the car. That was my nice way of saying, Mom, I know you're on a cane right now. You can get out here. I'll go park the car. Okay. While I'm sitting there, though, going through my mind is this wrong? Is this blocking somebody? Am I blocking the entrance? Can somebody drive around me? I better go park. This is not right. I won't let my mom out of this place anymore because that says no parking. You kind of weigh what's right, what's not right. And sometimes you can see the error of your ways and you say, oh my God, what was I thinking? Somebody who has the dark triad traits, they don't have that innate ability. It doesn't exist. That is why some of them, if not all, are amoral. There's amorality. They don't have the ability to say, is this right? Is this wrong? And guess what? They don't care. They do whatever they feel they need to do. They don't care if it's wrong. They don't care if it hurts you. They don't care if it hurts somebody else. They're going to do it, amorality. They also have this deep-seated need to retaliate. If you did something wrong on accident or you set a boundary, they're going to retaliate because that's just who they are. You cannot step on their narcissistic toes. Because if you do, there's going to be what we call a narcissistic injury, and they're going to have a very hard time digesting that something has happened to them and they haven't responded. So you may get a person who's going to retaliate at some point. May not be in the moment, but it may be down the line, but just know good and well, it's going to come, right? At some point, because they tend to be retaliatory or they tend to engage in retaliation. That's just who they are. They also tend to and we said this earlier, they tend to be very arrogant and grandiose. There is no humility, there's no modesty. You can't teach them. They don't want to be taught. Years ago, I had a young man, he was 14 years old. He was clearly on the autism spectrum. But in addition to being on the autism spectrum, he had some really interesting traits that came across as very, very narcissistic. He was a very arrogant child, a very grandiose child, and felt that everybody in his school, everybody at his summer job, and everybody he used to take what do you call those things? They're like after school programs, and he would play chess. He would, learn different things. Well, he couldn't even interact with the kids in his after school program because he always lorded over them. He had this sense of, I'm better than you. I'm dominant interpersonally. And you have to mold to what I believe is the correct way of being and thinking. And if you don't mold to me, then I'm not going to be in with you, and I'm not going to embrace you. I'm actually going to stay far off from you. And then I'm going to go over here and cry that I've been bullied. And that was really the mentality of this kid. And it was horrendous. He could not sit in a session and hear me, another therapist, hear his parents, hear his grandparents tell him, you need to be A, B, and C. Do this instead. Try this approach. You could not teach him. Why? Because he was grandiose. He was narcissistic. He was very arrogant. And so you may sense this at the core of a dark triad, of an individual with these traits. They're just arrogant. There's no getting around it. They may also pursue leadership, positions, and authority. We know why, right, guys? They tend to be grandiose. There's suspiciousness as well. Sorry, guys, got to check this real quick. Okay. There's suspiciousness, and there may be some paranoia. These individuals may also perceive themselves, especially the immature ones, they may perceive themselves as being extraordinarily misunderstood, ganged upon, pushed into a corner, covered, if you will. They may believe that they are the complete victim in their own story. And I once had a client like that, wrote a whole story, a 30-page little small story that he wrote for himself. And he became the victim in his own storyline. And he kind of encouraged his victim mentality by writing in a way that said, I'm the victim and everybody's against me. So that is another kind of trap that the dark triad personality traits, the individual with those traits can find themselves in. They often believe they are victims, when the reality is no, you're victimizing other people. You are not a victim, but they believe that they are. They also have what we call a killer instinct. They don't seem to, they don't seem to carry this disposition that says, thou shalt not kill. There should be no room for murder. There should be no room for crime. There should be no room for taking somebody else's ability to live. But these kind of individuals may not care about that. Think about the psychopath part of the dark triad. When we think of the killer instinct, it is just not there. They don't have any internalized guilt for fantasizing that somebody could be killed or murdered. That's just not there. And that's the psychopath piece of who they are. Let me highlight something, guys, that's kind of interesting when it comes to the dark triad traits. There's some research that suggests that there may be what we call the light triad. I'm going to type it in the chat box here. It's called the light, L-I-G-H-T triad, the light triad. And I'm going to say, anyone know what this is? If you do, guys, share it with us in the chat box. Basically, the light triad is this. It's cooperation. It's being concerned with humanity. There's having a deep-seated faith in humanity. There's this general desire for well-being in the world. So some research points to this as the light triad. It's pretty interesting. And also, before I go back to the chat box and then give you guys some impact on how this affects you and impacts you, I'll put it that way. Some research also suggests that the dark triad traits are not always bad. That if this is a person if you have a person in your world who has the dark triad traits, it's possible that they can not necessarily go down an evil road. They may actually become mentally tough and embrace challenges, and they may be less likely to back out of things that they are afraid of, So there is some small research that says that the dark triad traits may not always be negative. Okay, let me move, guys. I'm going to do this a little bit differently tonight. I'm going to move to the impact on you. Then I'll go back to the chat box and then we can wrap up. I'm going to do that instead because I feel like I just came from the chat box. So what's this family impact? What's this individual impact on you? Some of the research in psychology says that there's a lot of instability in a relationship with a person of the dark triad traits because, again, they tend to be narcissistic. There's no comfort in a person that you can get. Maybe I should put it this way. You can get absolutely no comfort from a grandiose narcissist. Okay, I'll put it that way. That being said, you're always going to be on your own. You're never going to get that love and affection. You're never going to get that care and concern. Psychopathy is coldness, callousness, strategic, and calculating manipulation. So you're not going to get a person who is mature, engaged, and fully bonded to you because they are emotionally detached. Then you have the Machiavellianism, where the person is really like this slick, sly kind of creepster who likes to do things to get a reaction, to make people feel less than, to put people on the spot, to minimize and condescend. So you put all that together, let's say in a parent, in a sibling, in an extended family, psychology says, and I have also observed, that there's a lot of emotional insecurity that you can experience over time. Insecurity, holes within your soul and in your heart about life, people in it, because of the emotional insecurity that they have caused. How can you have security in a person? How can you have security knowing that you are loved by a person who doesn't care about other people? They're cold and they're callous. They are manipulative, and they are individuals who play mind games, right? And on top of that, they are grandiose, arrogant, and narcissistic. How do you get love from that? So emotional insecurity. The other thing research kind of highlights is this developmental crisis that you can go through in many pieces of your life or over the lifespan, is what I was trying to say earlier. Developmental crises could be struggling in childhood, struggling in adolescence, struggling in young adulthood, right? Struggling in your older age. It's really hard to function in a world where there is an individual who you should be able to love and trust, who has the dark triad traits. It's just hard, right? And so you can go through developmental crises throughout your entire lifespan just because of all the negative things that this kind of a personality has done to you. There's also tons of emotional distress. That's I think that kind of speaks for itself. There's emotional distress. There's a conformity orientation within the family. I talked about that earlier, right? There's no open communication. There's no sharing of thoughts and feelings and behaviors. There's none of that. Everybody is just kind of hush hush. There's a key to the lips, right? And you can't unlock it. You can't unlock that door, because if you do, that's going to cause more problems in the family dynamic. So everybody has to be quiet. Everybody has to sit on the truth. Everybody has to go along and get along. Conformity orientation within the family. Research also suggests intergenerational transmission of dark triad traits. If you have a person who's has dark triad traits, you may want to look at your uncle. You may want to look at your cousins. You may want to look at your grandparents. Was there some narcissism here? Was there some antisocial personality there? If so, then maybe you can conclude that the other person in your family has the dark triad traits. So it tends to be generational, biological sometimes, right? Temperament, attitude, mood, behavior. And it can also be learned, meaning that whoever is the dark triad in your life, they may have had a dark triad person raising them, hanging out with them, being a close confidant. So you want to look those things within your family. The other thing is, you may find yourself having high emotional reactivity. How are you supposed to be calm? How are you supposed to be collected and cool and level-headed when all you've ever been around is somebody with a dark triad kind of a disposition or personality? You're going to always be on edge, and you may even find yourself feeling paranoid as well. Are you a narcissist? Are you a psychopath, right? Are you a character that's a Machiavellian character? And you may start seeing it everywhere in your life. Why? Because this is what you've always been under. And so it's hard to remove those glasses and see with a different set of lens, right? I'm going to talk more about this tomorrow, guys. I think our conversation tomorrow is the psychology of cruelty. So you're going to want to tune in then, because you may know some people who really, in a sense, they get pleasure out of being cruel. They get some kind of, boost of confidence by harming others and housing these negative thoughts on the inside of them about other people. And they can destroy your life for a very long time. So you may want to come join me tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to jump back in. This is a lot, right, guys? This is a lot. I feel like I've been talking for a whole 3 hours. But let me know in the chat box in the comments section if this whole idea of the dark triad traits makes sense to you. Because there are some people saying there's no such thing. There is no such thing as a dark empath. But research begs to differ with that. So let me know what you guys have seen in your personal lives. All right, let me go back to the chat box, guys, and engage you. Then we're going to wrap up. Mom Tude, hello and welcome. Always happy for your positivity. Good to see you tonight. Oh, thank you for saying that. Thank you. Because I'm like, who is this? Thank you. YHWH. Thanks so much for clarifying that. Yeah. All right. Let me go through this. Coco D. Hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Coco D. And welcome to the channel. Coco D says, what does it mean when your father leads you on about doing things with you to help you get out of the house besides work every day off? He pretends and magically gets busy and then still wants me to go to work again and again. Well, that's really hard for me to determine, not having some information on what's going on there. But let me say that it could be ADHD. Okay, let's not keep that out of the equation. It could be ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or attention deficit disorder for adults. He might just find himself busy like that because he wanders, right? His mind may wander over there. His mind may wander over there. I do it sometimes too. I swear I have ADHD, very mild ADHD, but I swear it's there. Because what I'll do is I'll say, okay, I'm off today. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go get some groceries, check on my mama, make sure she's okay. Then I'm going to come home, read a book, maybe do some gardening, get a shower, go to bed. It never turns out that way. I end up talking to a client who's in crisis. I end up paying a bunch of bills. I end up going outside, building a whole new deck instead of just going to prune some flowers. So, it's a possibility that he could be innocently misdirected. You know what I mean? But if you're alluding to this personality trait of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, he might. But it could also be ADHD. Consider the road to ADHD. You guys know what that is. I talk about it all the time on the channel. The road to sociopathy. I'm sorry, not the road to ADHD, but the road to sociopathy. And sometimes that includes ADD, right? ADD, oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, and antisocial personality. It's all on that spectrum, right? And so your dad could fall along that spectrum somewhere. Who knows? But it sounds more like ADHD to me, or ADD. Duran Beckford, I hope I said that correctly. Hello and welcome. Good to see you tonight. Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, bear with me as I go through some of these. Cinnamon Z, hello and welcome. Welcome to the channel. Good to see you. Cinnamon Z says, I ask that because if people treat me very bad, I can completely ignore them and go about my way. I probably didn't see your other comment. I missed your other comment. I'm going to try to scroll back and see if I can find it in just a minute here. I'm sorry, Cinnamon B. Is this Cinnamon Z? So sorry for that. Brian B, hello and welcome. Good to see you tonight. Welcome to the channel as well, because I don't remember seeing you. Brian B says, thanks. Hi, and thanks for the chat. You're welcome. Usually only narcissists call other people narcissists because normal people know it would only inflame the situation. True or false? I think it's false. I think it's false. No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's a matter of wisdom versus foolishness. Sometimes you shouldn't tell the narcissist that they are narcissists. Some research backs up the reality that some therapists should never tell their clients they're a narcissist. Put it in the treatment record, leave it at that. Put it as a rule out or put it in the treatment record and later describe it or explain it or discuss it to the client, or, put the diagnosis of a narcissistic personality disorder in the file and then explain it to the client and break it down in such a way that it helps them see that there's no benefit to being a narcissist, and that these are the characteristics. Because some narcissists are so stuck in their head, they don't want to be called a narcissist. Why? Because they think they're wonderful and great. So when you call them a narcissist, that's offensive to them, even though that's the reality of who they are. So, take that for what it's worth, Brian B. I don't think only narcissists call other people narcissists. Not at all. Again, it's a matter of wisdom. Sometimes you just shouldn't say it at all. And some providers refuse to talk about it. They're going to diagnose you. They're going to explain it to you in a way that's really broken down in ABC language, because a person who's a narcissist is not going to take to that very well. That's why we're here, Brian B., to get rid of information that is not factual, that doesn't make sense, and that just floats around in the world, erroneously. All right, let me keep going, guys. Axe to Edge, so that we can wrap up. Axe to Edge says, but how do you know they are the issue, the problem, lest you were trained specifically in narcissistic personality disorder? That is very true. You really don't. And that's why most therapists, including myself, discourages, quote unquote, evaluating other people, because you may not know what that is. When people come to see me for therapy, they say, I think my husband's a narcissist. Okay, by what measure? And sometimes they'll sit in front of me and they'll say, well, he's very arrogant. He's attitudinal and he's irritable. Yeah, but so are people with borderline personality disorder. Then the client may say, well, he was sneaky and manipulative and got away with a bunch of stuff. And he had a criminal history he never told me about. So I think he's a narcissist. Okay, but that also happens with people who have substance abuse issues, right? So we could go on and on, right? Axe to Edge and point out different things that's wrong, but do you really know what you're looking at? And so that's why most therapists, including myself, say, just stay away from the diagnoses. Talk to me about what you've observed, not what you've read on Google. That's going to be a better use of our time, And it may be better for you guys too, to just kind of keep yourself out of that mental trap of labeling. Just talk about the behaviors, So Axe to Edge, that was a good question. Yeah, that's really important. That's really important. The Good Glow says, Mommy Dearest would often tell me that others were bullying her. And for a long time, I believed her until I didn't. She liked bushfires everywhere. And when someone claps back, she cries victim. Yeah, there you go. The Good Glow, that was a great example. Yep. Another example, just to kind of add some girth to what you said, because it's very true. You also have those individuals who are highly arrogant, highly grandiose, highly self-centered, highly self-motivated, right? They want to achieve, but they're very grandiose and arrogant and prideful and pompous. You have those individuals, and they go around other people with that disposition. And other people are like, whoa, I don't like that. No, don't come around me with that. because that now you're trying to be way up here with me, and that is not acceptable. And people, including children and adolescents, they tend to push back and say, I don't want to deal with you. I don't like you. Some kids may even outright just say, I don't like you, or they won't play with you, or they won't engage you, right? And so that arrogant, grandiose disposition of I'm better than everybody in and of itself causes other people to say, get away from me, right? Remember, that's socially aversive personality, or maybe I should put it this way, that socially aversive situation. They don't blend well. They just don't blend well. But they are the individuals, you're right, that later cries, boo-hoo, I'm bullied, I've been intimidated, I've been harassed. Not necessarily. It's because of you that nobody likes you. It's because of you that nobody trusts you. It's because of you that you've been pushed back a few times, That can be a live chat in and of itself. Just the highness of their thinking is a scientific experiment in and of itself. Jeremy Robinson, hello and welcome tonight. Good to see you. We're going to wrap up here in just a little bit. Jeremy Robinson says, does that mean they mock and belittle you when you speak your mind? Yeah, sometimes. Right. Absolutely. It's the narcissistic piece of who they are. The Machiavellian piece of who they are could be, I'm making fun of you because you talk this way. And it makes me feel good that I talk this way to you. Or I make fun of how you talk, or I'm making fun of how you pronounce things, or I'm making fun of how you think. That could be the Machiavellian piece of the puzzle. And the narcissistic piece of the puzzle, Jeremy, could be, I'm better than you. Look at how you speak. Look at how you think, It's a horrible way to be. It's just awful. Silent Walk, hello and welcome. Good to see you. And thank you so much for that. That's so sweet. You guys are the best. I say that all the time. Ellie Wynn, thank you so much for that. She says, I see the connection to the delusional superiority of the dark subtypes behaving in this critical manner. My way or you are my enemy. There you go. That's an excellent way. I'm going to star that in the chat box because that's an excellent way to sum up their disposition. Yeah, my way or you are my enemy, 100%. Sun and Sunflowers, you're welcome. And thank you so much for that. So glad this is helpful. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Sometimes you have to distance, right? And even the people that you may not be able to go no contact with, you still kind of have to deal with them in some fashion. You can still push them to the outskirts of your social group. That dark empath over there, or that person who's manipulative and psychopathic can stay over there until I need them, right? You don't necessarily have to slam the door on everybody right away. You can kind of say, you know what, I'm just going to push you over there for now. Either way, building that space between you and them is a wise thing to do. Elizabeth Wadley, hello and welcome. Good to see you back tonight. All right, guys, I'm just scrolling through. Okay. Okay, bear with me, guys. Yes, you're welcome, MS. Thank you so much for that. That's awesome. Oh, what did I do? I do something on here every time, guys. It's like I can't get off of here until I hit the wrong button, erase something goes wrong. I'm going to put somebody in a timeout because somebody's trolling the chat. I don't know if you guys saw that. Okay, give me 1 second, guys. Jeez Louise, I'm so behind. Just looking for a comment so we can wrap up here. Four Seasons, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. I'm so far back in the comments, it's not funny. John Tracy, hello and welcome. Good to see you. The light triad is a new one. I don't buy it. I really don't. I looked at the research and I'm like, that doesn't feel right to me. That doesn't feel right. You know what I mean, guys? The light triad. It just doesn't sit right. But I will post a link in the comments section. I'll pin it to this live chat once we sign off, where you can go and read about it. I don't know. I'm still trying to digest it. Nimble, can I say that? Hello and welcome. Good to see you tonight and welcome to the channel. Nimble says, what about a woman who's being abused along with her children for years, who kills her partner out of fear for her and her children's lives? Well, I mean, you know, that's really not the way to go either. That's a problem, right? Because what happens in a scenario like that is you take somebody else's life. Now, the blood from that other person rests upon your children. Now, your children have to go about thinking and being aware of the reality that mom killed dad. And yes, dad was abusive. And yes, she may have cried self-defense, but mom's a killer. Mom's a murderer. And now my father's side of the family now sees that my mother has done something that is immoral, and even if it is to protect herself from, you know, from that abusive spouse, she couldn't find another way to get away. She couldn't find any other way to manage the situation. She had to kill him, take his life. That is the blood that's going to rest upon those children for a long time. I would not want to be that kind of spouse or that kind of a parent who says, you know what, I'm going to kill you because you're so domestically terrifying. And the pain and the hurt of that is a lot. That's traumatizing, right? And that traumatizes the parent, it traumatizes the children. It's still not enough. It's still not enough to say, I'm going to take your life. I'm going to kill you, right? Now, if he's trying to kill you and there's some kind of, you know, proof that there's going to be force there, that may be a little bit of a different thing. But again, I still see it as an immoral way to go about things. And the blood of that abusive parent is going to rest upon your children for a very, very long time. It is not a stain that you can erase. And I just wouldn't want to be a part of that. That might be a interesting way to kind of think of that. That's a long life stain that those kids have to live with. I'm not sure I'd want to be a part of that. Page of Earth, hello and welcome. Good that you caught me tonight. I saw your comment and I was halfway reading it today and somebody called me, so I had to pick up the phone. But I was really and honestly reading your comment. So thank you for that. So glad that you could catch us live tonight. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up. Jen Gable Okay, let's try this. Jen Gable Jewson? I probably messed that up. Forgive me. Hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat and welcome to the channel. I love that you say here their words do not match their actions. And while they may pretend to care, the reality is they do not. Not only do they not care, they may purposely bait you to react. 100%. Very much agree. And yes, that is a constant dynamic. Miss Janine MacArthur, you are my last comment of the night because I do have to run. Good to see you. Welcome to the chat tonight. You say, this sounds like so many folks in my entire life, people who just don't care, totally dysfunctional and arrogant bullies. They never change, but get more insane as they age. I very much agree with that. That is so, so true. These individuals cannot change. That is the thing. They don't have the capacity to change. I'm trying to find, there you are. There you are. They don't have the capacity to change. It's not a piece of who they are. And you can't build character in these individuals because at the core, they're a psychopath. At the core, they're a narcissist. And so those two personality traits makes it hard for them to learn from their consequences, right? Learn from their behaviors, change behavior that is socially aversive, and learn from their mistakes. They don't have the ability to do any of that. And guess what, guys? Research suggests they never will. Guys, I love you. I will see you tomorrow if you come back and see me. Tonight, I hope you have a wonderful Friday. Like I always say, in the next hour or two, I'm going to come back and look at a lot of the comments and answer some questions and all of that. So post it in the comment section. I hope this was helpful. We're going to talk about the psychology of cruelty tomorrow so that you can have a clinically succinct way to look at what cruelty really is. All right, guys. So love you so much. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.